afternoon, good evening, and good night. You are watching or listening to, depending on your platform of choice, the Best Movie Year podcast. On this podcast, each week, myself and Simon Foster, I'm Dan Barrett, the two of us, we go through the films of 1987, trying to determine whether or not it was, in fact, as the title of this podcast suggests, the best movie year. Through this year, there are quite literally some of the best movies you'll ever see, and then there's the rest of the movies. This week, we're talking about a movie called Police Academy 4: Citizens on Patrol. Is it one of the best movies of the year? Is it one of the worst? Is it middling? I don't know. Well, I do know, but we're going to go through this. Simon's got some very strong thoughts on this movie. I've got some very strong thoughts on this movie. This is Police Academy 4, part of Best Movie Year. Simon, when this movie came out, I was 7 years old, but I didn't see the movie when I was 7 years old. I was too young for that movie. Instead, I saw that movie at the appropriate age of probably about 10 years old, okay? But had I waited another, say, 3 years, I probably would have been too old for this movie. When did you see the film?
Dan Barrett, hello, viewers and listeners to the Best Movie Year. When did I see this film? Well, that's interesting. I didn't see it at the movies. The stench had already...
Sorry, Simon. Why do you hate cinema?
Well, hey, we're going to get into that. It was released in... I saw it on VHS. I think it was one of those ones I probably got as a rental down the track. I remember having fond memories of the first Police Academy. By the time the fourth one got around, the sequels already had a reputation as being the worst waste of celluloid that had ever been run through a camera. So I didn't watch Police Academy 4 at the movies. Do I regret that? Not one bit. It was released in the US on April 3rd, 1987. Let's just jump straight into the trailer because I really want to give people some idea of exactly the sort of film that we'll be chatting. The trailer.
Those talented graduates are back in Police Academy.
I want to welcome all of you to
Citizens on Patrol.
Citizens on Patrol.
The Police Academy has offered to train you citizens
You just don't think I'm fast enough anymore, do you?
to better protect yourselves.
Do we get to pack heat?
Attention all cars, attention all cars.
Mahoney,
Gee, I love saying that.
Jones, Hightower, Sweet Chuck, Zed, and Tackleberry.
Good idea.
From now on, by land,
You have the right to remain silent.
Who's gonna save me?
by sea, or by air, there's no escaping justice.
Gentlemen, may I see your license and registration, please? I can blast them out of the sky, sir. Not yet. I should give them a warning shot first.
Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol.
Now be careful, because a .44 Magnum has quite a kick.
See it in your neighborhood while you still have one.
Simon, I get the sense that you're a bit dismissive about this movie. And here's the thing that I want to throw out there.
Okay.
Here's what I'm putting out there. First of all, if you're going to be dismissive about this movie, to the level that I feel that you're dismissive about this movie, okay, I can point to some far worse films, and those worst films are Police Academy 5, Police Academy 5, Assignment Miami Beach, Police Academy 6, City Under Siege, or the worst one of the lot, which is Police Academy 7, Mission to Moscow, where most of the cast don't return for it.
Now, I did a little bit of research on this, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I'm going to jump in because we're listing we're examining the franchise as a whole, and that's a pretty good term for it. Police Academy, when it was released originally, way back when, was a surprise.
1984.
84, great year for cinema. It took just over 81 million at the US box office. That is pretty potent stuff.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said 1984 is a great year for cinema. Would you say that 84 is the best movie year?
No, because then we'll have to go back and start this whole premise again, and we're nearly, 18 episodes into this? So no, 84 is not. Well, 84 is a pretty good year. That was your Ghostbusters, that was your Gremlins, that was your Temple of Doom. That's the summer of 84 is widely considered one of the great... Yeah, you got a text
message during the week from one Simon Foster saying that he does not want to do any future years in this podcast where we're looking at a year where a Police Academy sequel may feature. I asked the question 1984 to Tumbleweeds because he realized he'd been snookered. Simon, 1984, yeah,
best movie year ever. That's true. So, Police Academy, big hit, $82 million at the US box office. Then came Police Academy 2, the inevitable sequel.
So, what's the budget of the first Police Academy film?
I have no idea. No, I only downloaded the box office. Meager, small. I think it was a pickup for Warner's. It wasn't a Warner Brothers film, so I'm not sure. Police Academy 2 dropped to $55.5 million at the box office. Police Academy 3 found its core audience, but didn't expand on that, took $43.5 million. By the time you get to Police Academy 4, $28 million, so almost half of the box office earnings. Police Academy 5, when they went to Miami Beach, it took $19 million, and that included mostly people in Miami. Police Academy 6, City Under Siege, $11.5 million at the box office. Now get this, maybe these aren't total figures, but Police Academy Mission to Moscow, in its US release, it took $126,000. I don't think it got much of a release at the cinema Mission to Moscow.
I don't think it did. I think it's pretty much a direct-to-video affair.
Direct-to-video titles. So, although it played theatrically here in Australia, but that's because we'd watch anything. So, right in the middle of that, the waning interest. Now, I also learnt from this, and I'm jumping all over the place here, sorry, my head's just a spinning with Police Academy knowledge. There was a TV series at some point.
There were 2 TV series.
Oh, my goodness me.
There was an animated series and a live action.
I do remember the animated series. Can you fill me in on anything about the live action? Because I have no recollection at all of the live action series.
Look, I've seen an episode or 2, but only on YouTube, and it was probably about a year or 2 ago.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever got the live action show here. We definitely got the cartoon show on Saturday mornings. I'm sure.
Okay.
I certainly watched a bit of it as a kid. The live action show had guest appearances from most of the cast at one point or another. Not all of them, but most of them. Sure. I believe that Michael Winslow was a semi-regular on at least half of the episodes.
Interesting.
Joe Flaherty was the main cast member on it, though.
The late great.
Yeah.
Late great. Some stats on Police Academy 4, Citizen on Patrol. Are we going to do Are we going to say the whole title for the whole podcast? Oh God.
We should. Can I just backtrack before we go too much further?
Let's do that. All right.
I'm literally on my screen. I'm just trying to pull up some box office figures because he's talked about $25 million. Those are, of course, US.
These are all US release. Yes,
Yeah.
I got them all here. Its budget was $17 million.
Yeah, because I'm looking at some figures here that say it was a $17 million budget with box office returnings, and I presume this is global. It doesn't specifically say, but if you're saying 25 million US, this makes sense for global. 76.8 million. So when you're looking at a small budget like that, because these are small budget movies, and it returns like that globally.
I'm bewildered that this movie cost $17 million to make. That's $47.5 million in 2025 dollars. I would suggest that 85% of that is Steve Guttenberg's budget. It's the first time he returns to the franchise since the first film. So, maybe he's just sucking all the dollars out. But this looks every bit the chintzy, cheap film it really is at heart.
Look, I would suggest 2 things. I'd suggest it's not just going to Steve Guttenberg. I think that you're looking at a film that was fairly heavy producer-wise, and then also a fairly extensive cast of recurring actors. Yeah. So I'm sure that, Bubba Smith is not commanding sort of as much money as Steve Guttenberg, but I'm sure he was probably well paid through this. And when you watch the movie, you really do get the sense from that core cast of actors that this is a fun thing for them to be doing. Because I know that it's quite easy to shit on this movie, okay, for all sorts of reasons that are fairly valid, okay? But at the same time, I really got a sense from a lot of the recurring characters, this was kind of a bit of like a family endeavor for close to a decade there. Like, they were coming and doing one of these movies every year. I think they were being paid reasonably well for it. Like, I get the feeling this was like a welcome thing that all of them were doing. Even to the point where Steve Guttenberg, he was clearly the biggest star of this, coming into it as well as leaving. Okay, but he was prepared to come back for number 5, and it was only because of a clash with the production of 3 Men and a Baby that he didn't. Okay, like, he was prepared to stick around with this, and like, he had a decent sort of career at this point. So I think there was probably some personal value to this beyond necessarily just like remuneration.
It ended up taking $28 million at the US box office, which in 2025 bucks is nearly $80 million. That's for a fourth sequel. That's pretty good, I got to say. So there was still some strength in the Police Academy brand at this point. It landed at number 40 on the Box Office Mojo chart of 1987. So it was in the mix. Unfortunately, and I haven't done this before with past titles, it has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 0% from 19 reviews. I was stunned that the likes of Janet Maslin, a famous film critic, Roger Ebert obviously weighed in on this one. The Washington Post said, just when you think American film comedy has hit the bottom of the barrel, this film makes a supreme effort and keeps sinking. Wow, that's harsh. Okay, Washington Post.
You mentioned Janet Maslin. Can I bring out the quote here? I've got it on a Wikipedia, but I also saw it on another platform when I was looking at this. Okay, let me just pull up the quote here. It says, the Police Academy seems to shoot for an ever younger crowd. The optimum viewer for Police Academy 4 Citizens on Patrol would be a 10-year-old boy. Even better, it'd be a whole pack of them. That's not to say the film isn't funny. It only means that the sense of humour being addressed is very specific. Stay away if drawing room farce is what you're after.
Yeah.
And I read that quote before I rewatched the movie, and I have seen this film quite a number of times through my life.
Jesus Christ.
Well,
yes.
I was a 10-year-old boy at some point. And I think that Janet Maslin's completely on the money on this one. I think this is a franchise which, I think about my experience with it, it was a VHS staple in my household. I watched it a bunch when I was a kid. I watched all the films a bunch when I was a kid on VHS. Okay, I probably continued that through to, when I was about 12 or 13. I do remember renting out the then new Mission to Moscow and think it was pretty terrible. Okay, and that's because it's both a bad film, but also I aged out of it. Okay, but I think that there's certainly warm feelings for this as a franchise of people probably my age, okay, who were the exact right age for these movies when they came out. And I'd be surprised if anyone sort of older than me really finds much value in them.
I don't disagree with that. The humour is... The comedic setups in this are certainly of the most basic kind.
Sorry, can I interrupt just a thought here?
Yes, go.
When you say the comedic setups are pretty basic, the one thing you really have to keep in mind with these films is, first of all, when was the last time you watched any other Police Academy movie? I'm presuming not recently.
Not in the last
30 years.
I was going to say 3 decades. Only because of this bloody podcast I'm watching this stuff.
Okay, well, here's the thing. When you've reached number 4 in the series, almost every setup in this is in relation to one of the previous setups from the previous movies.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Okay, like these are... It feels almost like Little Britain sketches, where you're watching it just to see it play out this week. What's the take on the exact same joke this week versus what we saw last week on the show? And so there is one sequence in it. Sorry, I'll let you get back to your big thought in a second.
All right, go on. Well, we should do the plot. Before we get deep dive into it.
in a moment, but we don't need to talk about the plot.
It won't take long to read out, trust me.
But there's a sequence in it where one of the recurring bits that is in, I think, all 7 Police Academy movies is that circumstances are set up in some way where the, nasty police captain, and whether that's Lieutenant Mauser in the 2nd and 3rd films, or whether it's Captain Harris, which we see here in the 4th film, and also is in the 1st film. Okay, him and Proctor, his sidekick, the two of them will be trying to chase down the cops because they think they're doing something sort of bad they can bust them on, and then find themselves in a dark laneway. They go through a service access door to suddenly find themselves in the Blue Oyster Bar, which is a gay nightclub, and there's always lots of leather-clad gentlemen who are more than happy to dance, and I forget the name of the song. There's a very specific song that plays every time in a Blue Oyster Bar. Okay, that's always the setup. In this one, the setup is literally apropos of absolutely nothing.
Yep.
It's just the two of them walking down this alleyway, and it's like, oh, the guy said they were off to go to a salad bar. I wonder if this is the place. And then they walk into the Blue Oyster Bar. That is the only setup for it at all, but it trades completely off the fact that's been set up 3 times previously.
Proctor, this is an alley.
I know, sir, but these are the directions Mahoney gave me.
Mahoney?
Yes, sir. He says this restaurant has the best salad bar in town.
Well, it damn sure better have. Doctor,
Yes, sir.
I don't see a salad bar.
Look, sir.
Maybe they serve seafood.
Not funny, you idiot. What are you looking at, you peckerhead?
Nice uniform. Makes me wish I'd worn my sailor outfit.
I'm getting out of here. Move it, move it, move it. Foster!
I don't think cutting-in's allowed, sir. Nice collar.
The point I wanted to make, and I now get to double down on my point. A little while ago in this podcast, we raised the fact that this is a movie aimed at 10-year-old boys. The wet T-shirt contest, the wet T-shirt sequence where Leslie Easterbrook is in the pool with a braless white T-shirt, and the Blue Oyster Bar gay jokes, I don't know if they're homophobic, but they're certainly exploitative of that lifestyle jokes, are lost on a 10-year-old, and this is why I don't even think that the Police Academy producers were sure of who they were aiming something like this at. It's such a lazy effort in terms of the comedy that it's trying to nail that it misfires in every regard. Let me just run through the plot. Trust me, it's 5
Just briefly, I do think they know who the audience were. Like, they were talking to the 10-year-old boy and everyone.
Yeah, all right. The plot. A new batch of recruits arrives at Police Academy, this time around civilian volunteers who have joined the Citizens on Patrol program, which is the brainchild of Dippy Commandant Lassard, George Gaines returning, looking very old and a little bit Trumpy. Although the Community Relations Project, under the guidance of original recruit Mahoney, Steve Guttenberg, returning to the franchise, has strong governmental support, a disgusted Captain Harris, G.W. Bailey, is determined to see it fail. Now, that is the plot on paper. The thing is, this film isn't about anyone. It's like, as you pointed out, it's a grab bag of skits and pratfalls and pranks. There's the pigeon poo gag and the helium balloon gag and the wet T-shirt moment. And there's that horrible, cruel, and very painful super glue gag. There's the toilet crane gag. There's all these sort of setups and pranks and pratfalls. But the plot it doesn't have a lead character, and it doesn't have any forward momentum. And I'm jumping ahead here to make a point, but we'll come back to this.
It's almost like you're suggesting that Steve Guttenberg isn't in this for more than 4 to 5 scenes.
This is the thing. And you say that all these cast members return because it seemed like a good family moment, for, like a gathering of old friends. But Hooks, the squeaky voiced African-American thing, she's barely in this. She has like 3 lines.
Here's the thing. So a lot of these characters are set up to be kind of one-off jokes in the first movie, but then they just keep on bringing them back movie after movie until they're just kind of part of the crew. So,
and who's the little dweeby one with the glasses? Who's sort of
Sweet Chuck?
Sweet Chuck.
Yeah.
That's terrible. But the odd thing is that I think if you add up the character with the most lines in this, for some reasons it's Proctor. He's got like a bunch of gags in this, and he's barely in it. He's got reaction scenes to G.W. Bailey, which maybe gives him sort of that sidekick kind of moment. But he wasn't in the first film much, and he's not the funniest thing in the Police Academy franchise.
He's never been the funniest thing in any of these movies. He's not even funny. I don't think he's got a single joke.
I forgot that he was a thing in any of these movies. So, look...
My favorite character in this one is a guy that doesn't even appear in this movie until the final third, which is the actor is Brian Toshi, and he plays Officer Tomoko Elvis Nagato, who came in the third film. And he's just kind of barely introduced in this one, only because I guess they could kind of remembered that they had him on contract maybe, and so he comes back and makes an appearance. It's really bizarre.
It's very bizarre. All right, I'm going to start from the very beginning. The music swells up.
Can I just... Sorry, before you get to stuff that's actually probably a bit more meaty, you did mention Sweet Chuck. Yeah. So something I want to throw out there is like a broad idea for these movies, okay, which is sort of paired with the idea that this is for 10-year-olds and also that it's a bit of a family sort of affair for it. I think it goes one step further, which is what I think speaks to the enjoyability of these movies for whatever it is in there. Okay, The jokes in these movies don't really work. Like, they're not really sort of great jokes. If you're a 10-year-old, you probably get into them, but broadly, they're not great. There's occasionally, like, a funny line, like at the beginning of this movie, there's a sequence where Commandant Lassard's asking the group of the Police Academy regulars, what is it you don't like about being a police officer? And part of it's supposed to be about community engagement or whatever. But then there's like 3 sort of zinger lines that have offered. And one of them is Debbie Callahan, who's the sort of large-breasted, tall, blonde lady. And she just has a line in there which is something along the lines of co-ed showers.
Yes.
And I think that's just generally a funny line. I think it's kind of buried in 2 terrible jokes around it, so it doesn't really quite land as well as it should. But it's kind of funny. And there's little moments like that that kind of work through it. But the writing on it is just generally terrible. But the performances are actually quite good. We talk about Tim Kazurinsky, who plays Sweet Chuck. Okay, he's Second City. He has former Saturday Night Live writer. He's got a proper career in comedy. And he appeared in this for, I think, 3 or 4 movies. You got people like Bobcat Goldthwait, and whether you like the Bobcat's on-screen persona or not is going to be a matter of taste.
Oh, it's tough at times.
Kind of hilarious. I can't... Yeah. I know it's against my better judgment, but I can't not laugh at Bobcat.
The poetry reading in this was
Bailey
kind of funny. Yeah.
Oh, I'm laughing already. But, like, all of them have, like, good comedic chops with just terrible material around them. Yeah. Okay, and it's kind of, I think it's hard to separate the 2 at times. In fact, for most of the movie, it's hard to separate them. But I think there's, like, generally good comedic performances, well, good performers in here with terrible performances and a terrible movie around it.
I think if we have to discuss the key players, which we do on this podcast, obviously Steve Guttenberg is the name player.
Who are the key players?
Well, could Steve Guttenberg look any less interested in what's going on around him in this? He yucks at the camera a little bit and gives his smirk, but I can't think of a quote-unquote lead actor in a film that is asked to do less than Steve Guttenberg does in Police Academy 4. And you say he returned again? Oh, no, he didn't come back for 5 because it clashed with see, that's another thing, because it clashed with 3 Men and a Baby. I can't believe in the same year that he had a huge studio hit with 3 Men and a Baby, which is a polished comedic production. I'm not saying it's not Oscar Wilde, but it is what it is. To do this in the same year, I was blown away by. And he was coming off things like he did the exact same. He did the Curtis Hanson thing with Isabelle Huppert, Bedroom Window. He was making notable films, and then he came back and did this. I think ultimately that probably hurt the Guttenberg brand.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I think he would have been a bigger deal than he was, like, had he not been doing these movies. But I think it's important to recognise he was doing the same shtick from the first film onwards. Like, the whole idea is that he's smirking at the camera. He's the, Jim from The Office for this franchise, broadly.
Yeah,
but yeah, he does seem very checked out in this. But I think all of them seem kind of checked out. They turn up for their sketch and then they're just kind of in the background of other scenes or just kind of, lazily walking through it. When the person who seems most committed in this movie is David Spade, the film is not necessarily batting at its most engaged.
No, you're absolutely right. I didn't even include David Spade amongst my key players because it does have some notable names in amongst the early career gigs.
More than most.
Oh, that's exactly right. And he can even skateboard a little bit, which caught me by surprise. I haven't got to the skateboard montage yet, but I'll get there, don't worry. The other notable name behind the camera is a man named Jim Drake. Now, he's a veteran TV comedy guy. 63 episodes of Night Court, 150 episodes of Mary Hartman. He did Golden Girls. He did Newhart. His last gig was A Sweet Life of Zack and Cody bunch of episodes. He only died a couple of years ago, Jim Drake. Now, he shows, despite having a storied career in small screen comedy, he shows no chops whatsoever for framing or pulling a gag off in Police Academy 4. I think it's fair to say.
So Simon, who is the what was the sequence that stood out to you? Was there anything that worked for you? Is maybe the question.
Look, the only thing that gave sort of some human connection for me, a real human connection in this entire film, albeit a very meagre one, was the Bobcat loves Corinne whatever the character's name was, Corinne Bohrer was the actress, when they're running each other in slow motion. I got a bit of a giggle when they were swinging each other around and they collapsed on the grass. Now, for that to be the most memorable scene for me, that's pretty dire. But that was the only thing that I sort of have any recollection of as being worthwhile.
You know what? That's probably the sequence I was going to pull out as well. I got a genuine, proper chuckle out of that. And it was pretty hacky, but it still kind of worked. And again, it's partly just because it's Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this week's Hottie Deep Dive for me is Corinne Bohrer. She has been...
Same.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, pretty lady, very effective screen presence, has had a long career in film and predominantly television since this. She, across the board, has done work in most of the TV series we watch and is still working to this date. But she had a lovely presence. She was probably the MVP for me, although I do have another one that I want to get to as we near the end of the podcast. A couple of quick observations. The music swells up at the start of this film, and I'm filled with good memories of one of my favourite comedies, Stripes. It sounded like the music from Stripes, and I don't understand why that is, but they're kind of the same sort of musical beats. For me...
I'm not sure, but whenever I hear like that sort of opening a couple of bars for a Police Academy movie, again, like the entire theme song as well, it fills me with so much happiness. I don't know what it is.
No, I don't know what it is either.
Again, this is probably just because this is like a beloved thing from my childhood. And it's just kind of core to, I guess, sort of me culturally in a really sad way.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier on that none of these actors are given much to do material-wise. Poor old David Graff suffers the worst of that when Tackleberry has the dinner with the in-laws scene where they pretend to punch each other. This is where and it may be a 10-year-old 1987 gag because I don't think a 10-year-old in 2025 would tolerate that shit. That's too dumb even for a current 10-year-old.
I remember always being bored by that.
Oh boy! And in an 82-minute film, give or take, the length of the skateboard montage, which features a very young Tony Hawk, it must be said. That skateboard sequence just went on and on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's like sort of two sequences right at the beginning, which I think are very much this movie saying, hey, look, we're a legacy property at this point. It's our fourth movie out.
Yep.
Okay, we've got to tap into what the kids are into. So it becomes about hip hop at the very beginning with
dancing
Lavelle
BMX
and
bikes.
Mahoney.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
it's Lavelle and Mahoney on patrol.
The opening credit sequence, which is just the laziest opening credit sequence. Welcome back to our comedy film. We're gonna goof around in a cop car for the whole opening credits. That's just lazy and terrible.
Citizens on patrol.
Take it, brother.
Have you heard the word out on the street? There's a new kind of heat that's walking the beat. Cause the neighborhood folks won't take no more. They got bars on the windows and locks on the doors. Citizens on patrol.
Yeah, and then they go to the skateboarders shortly afterwards for an extended skateboard sequence with, as you refer to him, a young Tony Hawk, but that just must have mean he's middle-aged at this point. He's been around for a while.
He has been around for a little while. I did get a bit of hey, they just mentioned Hill Street Blues when Hill Street Blues gets a mention because she saw it on a Hill Street Blues episode, so she knows it's a crime. Wow. Oh, my God. And then how do you wrap up a film with no story and no lead character? Hey, what about an air show? Hot air balloons and biplanes. All right, let's do that. So that's how you wrap up. That's how you wrap up a film with no story. Here we are at the end.
Yeah, pretty much. I like that we got through this entire thing without mentioning the fact that Sharon Stone is in this movie.
Yes, with a big hair, big Bon Jovi hairdo, and a very strange mustard colour zip and pantsuit outfit, which I couldn't get.
It was the 80s, man.
Boy, that's going to come up a lot. The MVP. So, did you have a most memorable scene, or we're going to go with the Bobcat Loves Connie?
Oh, it was the run to each other in the field
in slow motion
sequence.
Yep.
I thought that was funny, but only because it's off the back of Bobcat. Just generally, like that's the only reason why that works. Just want to get to Sharon Stone for a moment here.
Yes.
So Sharon Stone only has like maybe 4 or 5 scenes in the entire film.
Yep.
She's the love interest for Steve Guttenberg's Mahoney.
No effort is put into that at all.
Well, no, and nor does there need to be any effort. But like, there's no effort at all justifying why she's even there and sticking around. She's a reporter who's appearing at like a media doorstop.
Yeah.
Okay, like she's at this sort of impromptu press conference. She's the only journo to ask a question.
She's the only journo there.
Yeah, and then she just keeps on appearing as though like this is such a story that they need to embed a journalist in to like get like to the depth of it all.
Yeah. You know where
she doesn't know how to fly a plane, which helps for the final air sequence.
Well, that's why she's there for the whole thing. I look, I don't want.
And also, sorry, just
yeah.
Just on Sharon Stone, because I feel like you're about to pivot away from her.
Yeah.
I actually think she's really charming in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Sharon Stone, I don't think, is generally a charming presence on screen. Like, a lot of the movies are there to speak to her, like, sex appeal. And she becomes, I guess, a lot more sort of early 90s harsher with, I guess, sort of shorter hair generally for a lot of the films that we remember her in.
Oh, for sure.
But in this, like, she's a very sort of stereotypical, let's bring in the broad in that sort of, 80s comedy kind of a way.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's kind of what she delivers here. But, like, she is winning.
Sweet young thing, and she had a very had a warmth about her. She went from this to a Steven she went into Action Jackson, I think with Carl Weathers. She was one of the leads in that, also playing a warm sort of suburban housewife type of thing. But it wasn't until like the whole Basic Instinct pivot that she took on the harsher sort of sex bomb edge to her. Well, I guess probably Total Recall.
Like yeah.
Total Recall was the turning point for sure.
It's a bit of a crossover. Yeah,
for sure. For me, as a film buff, it would be remiss of me not to mention, and I'm putting her down as my MVP, an actress named Billy Bird. Now, Billy Bird is the wonderful elderly lady who left us in the early aughts, so it's been a long time since we've been without Billy Bird. She plays Mrs. Feldman in this. She broke into films in the 1950s, had a memorable sequence in The Odd Couple. She was often cast by director John Hughes and appeared in things like 16 Candles and Home Alone and Dennis the Menace. She knew comedy because her last film appearance was opposite Pauly Shore in Jury Duty, which is maybe my ultimate guilty pleasure. I think Jury Duty is hilarious.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I really do.
So I was too old for that when it came out.
So Billy Bird and Mrs. Feldman in this has some cute and funny moments, and she puts all the effort in that she needs to make a mark in this film.
Yeah, when I was a kid, one of the sitcoms I used to watch quite regularly was the American adaptation of Dear John, which was a UK sitcom that they adapted with Judd Hirsch in the lead. Anyway, she was one of the leads in that for just 5 seasons or whatever it ran for.
I wanted to make the point that this podcast is very much about films that we liked and grew up with. I'm determined not to make it a boy, films could also be really terrible in 1987, and I've really fought hard not to do that on this podcast, but there's no getting around the fact that Police Academy 4 is not only a relic of that year, but a relic of the kind of film that, look, let's not say these films don't get made anymore. Bad comedies are coming down the pipe. Just scan over your Tubi catalogue or your Plex catalogue or deep into Netflix or whatever, and you'll see this stuff is still there. But for this to be a major studio work as part of a big money-making franchise, it's one of the laziest, ugliest things I've seen in a long, long time, my friend.
I kind of knew that you were heading in this direction, and so I was kind of, pondering this as I sat down late at night with, a glass of whiskey in hand and, my smoking jacket on.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking about this, and yes, they don't really make movies like this for cinematic distribution in 2025, but it wasn't that long ago they were still making movies that are of a similar sort of spiritual value. And to this, I'm drawing to, and I'm trying to think of the name. I'm furiously scrolling at the moment through IMDb so I can remember the name of this film. I want to keep on calling it Game Night, but it's not that at all. It's that Will Ferrell movie where...
Old School.
No, later than Old School. The House. That's the name of it. 2017.
Oh, yes. Okay, with Amy Poehler.
Yeah. And there's nothing happening in the house that isn't of, equality to what we're seeing here in Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol. Okay, it's just as much trying to sort of be like that sort of comedy party movie. Okay, but none of, I found that movie to be particularly offensively bad.
Yes. I don't disagree with that.
It really was just sort of sketch after sketch with no real redeeming values whatsoever. At least this one here has the, patina of coming along as the fourth film in a series, so you can kind of justify the laziness of it. Whereas that film was just kind of lazy. But they were still releasing stuff like that into mainstream cinemas 8 years ago.
Oh, they're still doing it now. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, you don't really get comedies at all really released in cinemas in this kind of way at the moment. Like, that's kind of just gone away.
All right, so we've got Police Academy 4. Was this episode of Best Movie Year all that you hoped it would be, Dan? Because I know that you were working up to the Police Academy 4 coverage that we were going to provide for our listenership for quite some time. As you say, you were up at night with your smoking jacket and your stifter of brandy. Was it all you'd hoped it would be?
I think what I was looking forward to sitting down watching this is the same thing that I was looking forward to with Lethal Weapon, which we did like 6-7 weeks ago. Okay, which is that these are films that I grew up watching just a lot as a kid, and watching it as part of the totality of what does it look like when you're just watching a whole bunch of movies from that same time period. How does it kind of fit into that? Because I've always watched these as disembodied, experiences.
I don't think there's any argument that can be made that this helps the premise of the podcast that 1987 was the best movie year ever. I think it just highlights that 1987 also had its fair share of ugly, cynical cash grabs, films that were sequels that give sequels bad reputations. So I think that's where we stand on Police Academy 4.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the second ugly, cynical cash grab that we've seen so far in here. The first one being Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warrior.
Oh, yeah, but it was a better film in every regard. Is this the worst? Is this the worst film we've had? Because I hated Burglar. You know my thoughts on Burglar. That was the film up until now. Also starring Bobcat Goldthwait, who I don't dislike as a comedic presence. Just that his film,
and written and directed by the creator of the Police Academy franchise.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think this is the worst film we've seen. This is worse than Kindred.
No, the worst film that we've done so far has been Outrageous Fortune.
No,
I think that was genuinely terrible.
No, I can't place Outrageous Fortune. As much as I dislike that film, at least it looked like a movie. This looked like cardboard cutout people who just walked across in front of the camera and someone said their line somewhere else. No, I can't abide by that. But hey, here we are.
Yeah, agree to disagree.
Opinion in the next few weeks.
I like the two of us having like a standout argument over the fact of what was worse, Outrageous Fortune or Police Academy 4, and then the conversation gets so heated that we refuse the podcast together over again.
If that was going to happen, that would have happened already. Don't worry. The secret of my success is coming up in the weeks ahead. We have Matthew Broderick in his famous monkey movie Project X. We have Nick Nolte and a cast of dusty tough guys in Extreme Prejudice, and then we get to the movie I'm kind of working up to because I'm a dirty old man, Susanna Hoffs in her sole big screen appearance in The All-Nighter. So many good movies in 1987.
Yeah, I'm about to hit a patch of movies again that I've never seen and have like almost no context for, so it's going to be fun.
It will be fun. Dan Barrett, thank you very much. Oh, it'll be fun, don't worry.
Ishtar's not too far away.
Oh, now we're talking comedy.
Folks, this has been the Best Movie Year podcast. If people want to track down more, check out our YouTube channel. We've got, 18 other films that we've looked at so far through 1987, and we're about to start hitting the real sweet patch in about a month and a half's time of some of the biggest movies that we all know and love and revere. So we'll be doing that shortly, but we are also working through what are all the movies of 1987, and you can find those conversations at our YouTube page. We do have a podcast as well, so you can check that out, and the video version is on Spotify. If you like Simon Foster, check him out at his film review website. It's called Screen Space, and that's screen-space.net. Is that right, Simon?
Close enough.
Okay, don't have the plug then. And check me out at alwaysbewatching.com. It's a newsletter that comes through 5 days a week with all the news stories about the TV and streaming space. This has been the Best Movie Year podcast. We'll be back next week talking about Secret of My Success. which is generally a film that I think holds up very well, or does
Very, very sweet film. We'll look into that.
We'll find out next week. Folks, we'll see you then.